So Sarah, what do you think makes you and I have worked with lots of websites around the country. What do you think makes a successful site?
I think that's a really difficult question, because success is different for different people. I mean, on the one hand, we've got people who've set up sort of very business-minded sites that are looking to replace a news service, perhaps in the community, and monetize it, take advertising, and be a business, whether it's run as a sort of cooperative venture or some, just a straightforward limited company. But then they're not the whole story, as I think you'll agree.
They're a minority, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they are. And so success for a lot of people is the fact that people read it each day, or the fact that they comment, or the fact that they send in their photographs. I mean, for me personally, with my small site, I don't have any sort of commercial ambitions for it at all. I like the thought of it being read, but one of the biggest things for our site is that people like sending their photography of the area.
Mm-hmm.
And so receiving lovely pictures and images from around the town is a sign of success for me personally. That wouldn't be the same perhaps if you were very campaigning or into changing something about your local community.
Yeah, I mean, my site grew out of community action, and for me, I would say rather bluntly, success is if we get one piece of dog shit cleared up, that's success. It's worth doing. If we get one person to think about going to a meeting, to go to a meeting, to comment on a consultation, to get engaged in a group discussion, that is success, because for me it's creating new forms of social action and social connection. I think the sociologists would call it building social capital of many different sorts. So if you go back to Halpin's original work on social capital, there's bridging and, off the back of Putnam, there's bridging and bonding social capital in particular. And we see this weirdly in King's Cross, where we have a very, very politically diverse audience, and indeed the contributors on my site, one of them, without naming names, would self-define as being very, very left-wing indeed. Another was a John McCain supporter in the last American elections, and very, very diverse. And they talk and they chat, and it's creating bridging capital between people who would otherwise never connect in the community. And we see all sorts of bonding social capital as well being created through photos, as you discussed, local history, local events, where people come together around a point of reference in their local environment. And they do it online. And it's not to say they don't do it offline, but in a really busy, stressed urban environment like ours, online provides a type of space where these things can happen in a way I don't think they would otherwise. And so I applaud people who come at things with a business plan, and they approach a local audience in a very business-like way, and they raise money. That's fab. But that is a segment of a broader movement or a broader type of hyperlocal website. There are guys like we know out there who are running a site that might do one post a month in a highly rural area that just tells people about germane things for their community. And they're successful too if they're creating some bridging or bonding social capital, or helping push people or nudge people into social action they wouldn't otherwise have taken. So it's a very broad church.
Yeah, I think it's something that when you're starting out as well, it's worth spending a bit of time talking about with the other people on the site, that what is the success. There are sort of standard metrics that people use to see how many page views, for instance, or how many users that they have, or how much pounds and pence is in the pot, or whatever it is. But it's probably a good conversation to have if you're a little group setting out to do it, because obviously what that ultimate sort of success measure is going to change your activity to some extent, or focus your activity perhaps more fairly.
I always say to people who ask me, what sort of audience should I be aiming for? How many people should be looking at the site? And I generally say, well, just relax a little bit, because first of all, you're never going to get the audience that the Guardian or the Daily Mail, heaven help us, have. You'll get a different size of audience for your community, so don't worry about big commercial metrics of that sort. And you can sell advertising, display style advertising. It's possible to sell without having the world's biggest audience if you're selling to very, very local advertisers, if that's your thing. But similarly, don't worry if you're non-commercial, don't worry about your audience size. Worry about a little bit more about who is reading it and whether they're relevant to the aims you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to bring about some form of social change, then obviously you want local councillors to read it, and possibly even in a part of the ecosystem, local journalists who might work on a local paper, who initially anyway the council might put more weight behind. You want other people, if you're talking about school issues, at the school to read it. And so these fairly obvious groups one can define that help you achieve whatever your objectives may be. But I don't think many people start out, in my experience, with a clear set of objectives. They just sort of start, usually to tackle a particular thing, then the site evolves for a while, and then sometimes they pause and they wonder what they're going to do next, and then they start it in a more commercial basis maybe and start to earn money for it. I think a really good example of that at the moment, a site really going through a purple patch, is a little bit of Stone in Staffordshire, run by Jamie there. He took a pause at one point, I think, and said, well, can I run this site as a commercial thing? Can I make some money from it on a part-time basis? Approached it in a more business-like way than had been hitherto, and he's got a little business running there that is great for Stone, and it's a great business for him, and it fits in well with his work, his day job, which I believe is at the university. So sites don't always have to continue in a straight line. They often go in great bursts, and then there's a pause, and there's another burst.
I think that's right, and because some are now kind of mature in a way, they've been going for perhaps 4 or 5 years. That's a bit of a crunch point for some people, because starting off with a fit of enthusiasm, you know, perhaps 1 or 2 people, and then over a couple of years that those people move on, do different things, move out of the area or whatever. Keeping the momentum going is quite a challenge, and there has to be probably a point where you risk it running you. And I think we've seen that on a few occasions where the thing has become so popular or successful, or the audience is so keen on it and being delivered, that the people running it just can't cope anymore, or just, you know, find it too difficult. And I suppose there's a point where things mature to that extent where it's time to just sort of step back a little bit and look again at the reasons why you're doing it. What are you aiming to achieve from it, and is it really feasible to carry on? Hopefully it is. But those conversations kind of come up about sort of 5 years, I think, don't they?
Yeah, no, I've been there. In King's Cross we've had, 8 or 9 regular contributors to the site. It's a site that has grown up what the statisticians call an S-curve, so a slow, steady period at the start, then a period of massively accelerated growth, then a steadying off at a new level. And we've gone through big campaigns that have really tired people out, burned people out. They've been working so hard on the campaign, driving it through the site, that they've put too much energy into it, almost myself included on 1 or 2 occasions. We took a long pause at Christmas. We were off 3 or 4 weeks without posting because we were all just too busy. One of our contributors has moved away, another one has moved to another country. I don't think he was fleeing the site, I think it was just a nice thing he was doing. Moved to the south of France. And others' interest waxes and wanes. And myself, in the last 2 years, I've started a family, and it's been really busy running a site as a volunteer activity. And I often make that comparison with other volunteer activities. So, like, can be a bit like a different form of community action. You can be running a children's football team, a scout troop. You could be doing flowers at the church, chapel, mosque, whatever is your thing. You could be a special constable. All these forms of volunteer action can serving a semi-professional outcome. They're important parts of the community infrastructure. But they can occupy vast amounts of time and money. So people say to me, well, do you spend money on your website? Well, maybe I think it costs me about £50-60 a year, which I always say is much less than just 1 tank of diesel for the minibus to take the kids on a Scouts outing, which parents will often put their hands in their pocket for. Or going to see a football match. If you follow a football team and go to away games, you'll end up spending a lot more on your hobby than you might do on a volunteer on a hyperlocal website. So, but as with all those hobbies, they can take over your lives, and you can allocate a bit too much time to them. So some pacing is good, but don't pace it so much you remove the passion, because it's the passion that really makes a good local website run by volunteers.